Let's get into it. Sold Not For Sale podcast. Coach Colin here. We got Dave Smith going to bat for Joe Rogan hard in this debate. Dave Smith sat down with Chris Cuomo. I'm going to show you a clip of Joe Rogan and Dave Smith talking about mainstream media, Chris Cuomo, the pandemic, what all that was like. And then we're going to bring it over to Dave and Chris actually having a debate. And Dave just demolishes Chris Cuomo. There's no point that Chris Cuomo has that can stand whatsoever. It's ridiculous. And Dave is really pushing home what a lot of these mainstream media talking heads should be doing, not just to Joe Rogan, but to all of us, which is apologizing. Let's get into it right now. It's absolutely wild, this debate. Don't forget about the new channel that I got. It is called Coach Colin Media. We got about, 108 videos? We're not playing around on that channel. Cookies are racist. Did you hear? Poor attempt by Joe Biden to court the black vote. I did pretty much a 20-minute stand-up set on how ridiculous Joe Biden is. We talk about Trump's verdict. We talk about all sorts of things on that channel, breaking away from the Rogan content. But other than that, ladies and gentlemen, let's get to this Rogan clip.
Like when you're not there,
Yes!
he's like,
That poor little bastard.
He goes, I got Rogan coming over to the house. Put away the good china. He goes, oh God, the Rogans are coming.
There's levels of people. I'm friends now. This is a bizarre thing to say, with multiple billionaires.
Yeah.
I know multiple guys that are billionaires, and they're very nice people. And I can see how it happens.
But you're also friends with the cool billionaires.
Yeah.
You know, like you managed to find the cool ones.
Well, Elon's the coolest. He's my favorite billionaire. That dude's wild. He's a wild boy. I will buy Teslas as long as they sell them, just to support that dude.
Just to keep Twitter going.
And they're dope. But yeah, just to support him, man. You goddamn it, you need an Elon Musk in this world. You need a wild boy. You need a dude who's got $200 billion who dunks on people.
Dude, how great was watching him realize in real time how stupid Don Lemon is?
Oh my God.
Like you could actually see on his face as he's asking the questions, and he's like, well, if you lower standards, then you're going to get more incompetence. And Don Lemon's like, so you're saying black people aren't competent? And he's like, no, that's not. And he slowly starts to realize like, oh, I have 80 IQ points on this guy.
It's not just that. He said a very important point. He said that Don Lemon was doing CNN outside of CNN.
Yep.
And you don't have to do that. You just don't, nobody wants that anymore.
I'd say you can't do that. It's not going to work.
It's not going to work. But more importantly, you shouldn't do it because it's not good for you. Just be a human. Don't be this thing, this journalistic, probing bullshit thing that's trying to spin a narrative. Actually, have a conversation with this human.
Yep.
You will probably agree with a lot of the things he says. You will understand his perspective, even if you disagree. You could see how an intelligent person would come to this conclusion. This is how we can talk to each other now. We don't have to be confined by these 5-minute segments where you have producers and executives that are pushing an agenda that's on a network that's run by a bunch of huge fucking corporations that have a vested interest in swaying the narrative one way or the other. You don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah.
It's not necessary. It's bad for people. It's bad for humanity. It's a bad way to distribute information. It is literal propaganda, whether you think it is or not.
Oh, dude, I've done like a fair amount of like cable news shows, and you know, they'll do these things where it's like a panel and there'll be like 3 people on the panel and the person hosting the show. And nothing again, like there's some people who I really like who I've been on their shows, but it's like you're trying to talk about the most important topics and everyone gets 20 seconds. It's so ridiculous.
I want you to imagine a scenario. Imagine the scenario where COVID breaks out, and for whatever reason, the mainstream media is saying that we should be very careful about experimental drugs. And these journalists start bringing up all these stories about different drugs where you could see how they chose very specific tests, and that some of their studies didn't go well at all, and they buried those, and they're allowed to do so. And about how they've killed thousands and thousands of people with these drugs they knew were bad for them. And if the journalists were saying this, but the podcasters were all going, you need to trust the science. Everyone should be vaccinated. Be vaccinated or you're a fucking plague rat. Imagine if the podcasters were calling the unvaccinated plague rats. Imagine if the podcasters were encouraging medical misinformation. But my point is, imagine the backlash right now where there's none coming their way.
Yeah.
There's zero. It's like everyone forgot about it. It all went away.
Well, I'm debating
we
Chris
would
Cuomo.
Be in jail.
I'll be debating Chris Cuomo in a few days,
That's
so that'll be fun.
Bro,
for that.
we would be in jail. All these people that are dropping dead, all these people with strokes, all these people with heart attacks, all these people with what was the AstraZeneca thing that I sent you today?
Yeah. What was
AstraZeneca? They were saying that 11% of the people had an adverse side effect.
It's like serious adverse side effects. Yeah. But even as you lay out this scenario, doesn't it almost in some way be like, it feels like that makes more sense? What would make more sense was that comedians like me and you would have just been saying the dumb thing and repeating it.
Yeah.
But the person in a suit and tie at CNN, I mean, this dude's a professional newsman. Like, he knows what's going on.
They would make a very good argument for ending podcasts.
Sure.
They'd make a very good argument for prosecuting people, class action lawsuits, all the people that encourage these podcasters with their limited, you don't even have a medical degree and you're on the internet telling people what to do, which is exactly what they did.
They did, even though we were getting everything right. And now most of them will admit that we were right.
Now when you see Chris Cuomo and Patrick Bet-David spinning it.
Listen, I don't want to go too hard right now because I want him to show up. But the fact that, and I will make sure to bring this up to him, but the fact that what he said, and if you listen to it, he literally goes, as he's explaining that he is on ivermectin, he goes, now a lot of people are going to say Joe Rogan is right. And then he has a moment where he pauses, realizes he can't even come up with anything. And he goes, all right, Joe Rogan was right. And then goes on to say exactly what you've been saying for years now, that just the most basic thing that anyone who did 5 minutes of research could have figured out, which there's no controversy in any of this, that ivermectin has been given to humans billions of times, that it's a safe drug, and that there were some indications that it might help with COVID, and that it's not horse dewormer, but the fact that that's not attached to like a profuse apology, be like, hey, I'm like, if I couldn't imagine a scenario where I had like viciously smeared someone for something, then realized he was 100% right and I was 100% wrong, and when acknowledging that, I wouldn't also go, hey, I'm really sorry about that.
I think there's a cult-like thinking in mainstream media, whether they know they're being influenced by their sponsors or they're not. But I don't even think they understand how crazy it is. When I had Sanjay Gupta on, Sanjay Gupta is a very nice man. I think he's a good man. I really do. And he's a surgeon. I mean, he's very busy. The guy's constantly working. And he comes in to give medical information and give this, lay things out for CNN. And I think he thinks he's doing the right thing. When they asked him to be on the podcast, I don't know what they thought was going to happen. I think they thought they were right. I really do.
I think my guess, and this is just a guess, but I have been in that world a little bit. Like I worked for CNN for a year, and I've done a lot of shows on Fox News, and I've met a lot of people, and talked to a lot of people who work at CNN and Fox News. And my guess on it is that, number one, he had a book, so they want to sell copies of the book, and they know you have the biggest show. And so they're like, oh, this will be really good. And then I also think there's this thing where they all really do feel like we're the experts. And they know they're the experts because, I mean, I just got off the phone with, the chief of staff of the White House. And I know that, they're very into that kind of like that world where I've talked to everyone with status. And I think there's hubris involved where they're like, you'll be able to handle whatever a comedian throws at you. Like, you're a medical expert and he's not. But then you would just ask really basic questions, which my favorite was when he goes, so are you going to...
Man. That is exactly what they thought. They thought Joe Rogan was dumb. And that's the narrative, right? I mean, the guy's talking about eating elk and going bow hunting. It's all the things that the left disrespects. All the things that they look down upon. They go, oh, he hunts. Well, that's, animal cruelty. That's terrible. Oh, he does jujitsu. He does martial arts. Oh, well, that's violence. I mean, there's a lot of misogyny in there. I mean, unbelievable. His tattoos all up and down his arms. Wow, he looks like a criminal, looks like a biker. Then on top of that, he's a comedian. He says crass things. He's getting high all the time in front of millions of people. Oh, this is terrible. Right away, they just, in that world where you have on the suit and tie and you're Don Lemon or you're Chris Cuomo or whoever, you think, oh, this guy's dumb in comparison to us. Like, he's probably going to smoke a joint before. He probably won't even know what's going on. They for sure had that. Nobody... The thing is, especially in film and television, I've worked this type of thing before. Even if somebody did watch Joe Rogan and knew that he wasn't dumb, they couldn't even go and warn anybody because then they'd out themselves as being someone who watches Joe Rogan. And they can't do that. They can't do that. And I know it sounds crazy, but you can't. You really can't. It's the most left-leaning place that you could be is on a film set or in a newsroom of sorts, especially if maybe if it's Fox it might be different, but CNN, MSNBC? You kidding me? Joy Reid walks into a room. You think you could just be like, yeah, that Joe Rogan episode was great. She's going to be like, that guy should be fired. I think he's a Nazi. He said something about Joe Rogan. That's 100%. I'm not even exaggerating. That's the crazy thing. Now, they get into a discussion here. And let me just say really quick, Joe Rogan said something right here. He goes, I don't even think they fully understand. They fully understand what they're doing. They 100% understand what they're doing. If you've listened to enough Tucker Carlson interviews, Tucker was one of them. And Tucker is the one that's willing to speak about the way things were. He has worked, PBS, CNN, Fox. I'm sure there's others that you can name right now. He's worked this whole thing. Father in Washington, being around people in Washington, lived in Washington. He came out as the Tucker we know today, and he fully said, I just didn't see it at times. But when it came to actually being in the newsrooms, he knew. He completely came forward and said he knew about what was going on and what they were being fed and how all of that worked. And he was somebody who was a writer and liked to write his scripts because he was really into that because he started as a writer. But he's confirmed many people are getting their talking points from elsewhere other than their own mind and writing it and saying, hey, put that in the teleprompter. He's confirmed this time and time again. So they 100% know what they're doing. And now that you hear Chris Cuomo talking, well, you haven't, you're going to in a second. Oh man, it pisses me off so much. You have no idea. They're fully aware. They're fully aware. And just to correct Dave Smith says Joe Rogan, Chris Cuomo said that Joe Rogan was right. No. He didn't say Joe was right, actually. He said Joe was right, but he actually didn't have the right to be talking about the pandemic and the lockdowns the way he was because he didn't actually know. He didn't know. So yeah, it seems like he's right now, but while he was doing everything, which was just questioning things and interviewing people, no. He wasn't right at that time. When Joe never said he was 100% right and was just asking questions, had people on from Chris's network and people who the medical industry was like, no, shun that person. That person can't be a part of this whole thing, this discussion. So I get infuriated when it comes to Chris Cuomo. I'm going to play the clip in a second. I'm sorry. It is the worst thing that Patrick Bet-David has ever done. Ever. And there is no explaining why you would have Chris Cuomo be a part of your brand. There's nothing you can say. Because if somebody is this divisive or willing to do something so detrimental to America, and then you take them on and you start to back them up, you're also backing what they were doing. And they're willing to do it again because he didn't do it because he's evil. He did it because somebody paid him the right amount of money. And that's even worse in a way. All right. Sorry. Let's get into it. This is the first clip where they're having a debate. Let's get into it.
Yeah, okay. So to take on what you just said, no, not everyone and not everyone who gets paid. Joe Rogan is bigger than every single show at CNN combined and gets paid more than every single person at CNN combined. And he was 100% right about this thing through the entire time.
No, he wasn't.
Yes, he wasn't. Hold on.
Okay.
Hold on. Let me get this point out here.
Tell me what he was right about.
Okay, how about, you know what you just revealed last month on Pat's show about Ivermectin?
Yeah.
Joe Rogan was saying that, and you were smearing him for saying that.
Yeah.
You literally said he's taking horse dewormer.
Yes.
He should be ashamed of himself. You pleaded with your audience to not take it.
Yes.
Then you come back around and you go, hey, Pat, you know what I just found out? Turns out this thing isn't for animals. Turns out humans are. But Chris,
that's
a
not,
5-minute Google search and you would have known that.
First of all,
how do you not apologize to Joe Rogan?
Listen, do you know who disagrees with you? Do you know who disagrees with you? The people who make ivermectin disagree with you.
Hold on. What do they disagree with me about?
That the drug should not be taken as a standalone for COVID-19.
I never said it should.
That's what Rogan was saying.
No. He did not. No, listen. See, this is the thing, Chris.
Yeah,
that is a lie. That is a blatant lie.
What did he say?
Rogan. So you just pretended that I said it's a standalone for COVID. No. Here's what it always was. Here's what Joe Rogan said. My doctor prescribed it to me, along with several other medications, just like your doctor prescribed it to you. That's what he said. What I'm saying is that it's not horse dewormer, as you and everybody else at CNN mindlessly repeated.
Now,
what he said, no, let me finish.
Go
what
ahead.
he said, and what I'm saying is that it is a medicine that's been prescribed to people millions and I think billions of times. And it was totally demonized. Why? You already said why. You said it 2 years too late, but you already said why.
No, here's
because
why.
no one owned it.
Here's why.
Man, going in on him. We're going to move on to a different clip now where the call out happens because, Chris Cuomo he's on TV. He was on TV. He still is on, media. There's recordings of him saying the things that he was saying. And he's just like, no, I didn't say that. No, Joe wasn't right, even though he already said Joe right. He's flip-flopping even as we speak. He just said, no, Joe wasn't right. Another clip weeks ago, he said Joe was right, but he didn't know exactly, so it was wrong for him to act a certain way. He is all over the place. This guy is, I don't even know what to call him. A bastard. A con man. We'll call him a con man. I'm trying not to swear, you know what I mean? But the one thing that Joe was right about, because, Dave is going hard for Joe right now. He loves Joe, obviously. Joe has, taken him, the Rogan effect. You're on Joe Rogan's podcast as much as Dave. There's a bump that happens, a serious bump in your life. So he's saying Joe was right the whole time. The thing that Joe was right about was asking questions. You should be allowed to ask questions about anything. You should be allowed to say, what's going on? What is all this? What do you mean? Well, this guy says this guy says this. I'm just going to stand back. I don't want to get involved. I don't want to do anything right now. I don't want to be branded as an anti. I don't want to just jump in line. I want to understand more. And that's what he was doing. And he's already talked about the fact that he was someone who's just going to jump in line and do the thing. And he decided, and by the grace of God, something happened where he couldn't actually get it done. And then something happened and it made him go, oh, wait, hold on. And then he started asking questions and, it was a snowball effect. So we're going to move on to the next clip. Man, Chris Cuomo, absolutely ridiculous. Dave Smith going hard, not holding back. Love this clip. Let's go to this next clip here.
During this time when they were all saying it's horse dewormer, everyone was repeating. No one ever said, we're talking about the veterinarian ivermectin.
That's because
we're not talking about the ivermectin that doctors prescribe.
Right.
No one ever said that. But listen, you told me I should apologize. So what do you think I should apologize for? And then I'll tell you what I think you should apologize for.
I know what you think I should apologize for. Obviously, there was so much talk that they don't want you to take ivermectin. Ivermectin is the way to go. Take it. Joe Rogan got better from ivermectin. And by the way, I don't like what people did to Joe Rogan about ivermectin. I don't like
You did it.
No. Okay,
Yes,
good.
you did.
Find the clips.
Dude, find the clips. You shamed Joe Rogan.
Find the
You
clips.
said he's taking horse dewormer. You and Don Lemon were chuckling at each other about it.
No.
I'll go find
First
the
of all,
clip.
you just saw the clips.
I watched it.
I'm not chuckling. I'm listening to Don. But
No. The
here's
clip
point.
I'm talking about wasn't on there, and
Here's-
it's absolutely
look, we
there.
were
Here, do we have it? Hold on, let's play the clip.
Go ahead.
Injecting drugs for animals and horse.
And people telling them to. Oh my God. What person? You talk about cancel culture and who to shame. Ivermectin, a dewormer, really?
They are shaming themselves.
That's
No
what
one
it
has
is.
to shame them. They're shaming themselves.
So you're taking a dewormer right now,
This
Chris.
is
Chris,
a
you can't
dewormer.
apologize for that. You weren't being clear that it was this,
right.
and you know that, dude. You're being so dishonest right now, man.
I'm not
You
being
were
dishonest.
talking about ivermectin, the drug. You were not talking about
was-
this version of ivermectin. Come on,
I
man.
was responding to a situation where we were told that this is what people were searching out to take, and nobody knew what it was going to do to them. Look, I'm taking the drug right now. Obviously, I don't think it's all poison. I stopped calling it the horse drug when, and you can not like it, CNN's chief medical officer.
When they told me that I have to stop calling it that. He's terrible. He's absolutely terrible. I'm going to play another clip of Dave going in on this guy, but just the call out right there. If anybody else, any other person who said, no, I didn't say that, and then someone pulled up a clip on a projector in front of a crowd of hundreds of people, and then they press play and you say the thing that you're in person saying you didn't say, anyone else would be like, all right, I'm sorry. All right, I'm sorry. But it's that whole thing that they talked about in the Joe Rogan clip, doing CNN outside of CNN. That's exactly what's happening here. Is that he still has this attachment to the way that the mainstream works. That because he puts on the suit and tie, he's the expert. What he says goes. He has the backing of this huge network. He just forgets that he doesn't have the backing or the financing of this huge network anymore. But he still has all the mannerisms of someone that does. He's still acting that way. And the main thing that they do in mainstream media is they never expose their biases whatsoever. If you can't tell, I'm a little biased towards Chris Cuomo. I do not like this gentleman. They never admit their biases, and they never, ever, ever apologize. Ever. Never. They never say, hey, we got it wrong, and there's new information now, and we just want to keep you informed. They never do that, ever. And he's still doing it, and he's not realizing that if you're going to step into this independent world, where now you're in your spare room doing reactions on the Trump verdict and this and that, and you're sitting with Patrick Bet-David and having debates and stuff. If you're going to step into this world, the first thing he should have done is apologize to everybody. The exact people that you were demonizing are now have become your base. And you think you're just going to step in and be like, oh, I'm not apologizing to nobody. Again. News Nation is one thing. News Nation is like, oh, yeah, we got one of the CNN guys. Patrick Bet-David, I have no idea what this guy's doing taking in Chris Cuomo like this. Again, he probably needs a big name. He has no big names. I think whatever he spent on Chris, that money shouldn't have been spent. Whatever he was willing to spend on Tucker, which was $100 million, take some of that, throw it all at Candace Owens. That's it. Throw it all at her and just be like, hey, come over here. We want you to debate people. We want you to do your show here. We want you to be on our podcast. Everything. Man, let's get into the last clip here. Absolutely. Actually, it's the second last clip, actually.
We'll take the vaccine?
Okay, let's just stick with Joe Rogan. For mocking and smearing a person from the #1 show at CNN and then years later admitting he was completely right about what he said. How is that not attached to an apology? If I ever smeared someone aggressively and then 2 years later I had to admit that I come out and just say what you said to Pat on his podcast was exactly what Joe Rogan was saying this whole time. You go, first of all, it's not horse dewormer, it's used on people, it's very safe, and my doctor prescribed it to me. That's why I'm taking it. Yes, if I ever did that to someone, I would apologize for that.
But it's not the right context. And first of all, it's both, right? It's veterinary grade and human grade. I was not making a market.
Which one do you think Rogan was taking?
I hope he was taking the human grade if he was prescribed it.
Which one do you think Joe Rogan, who just signed his second $200 million deal, was taking? Do you think he was stealing it out of the cat bowl, or do you think he had a doctor
I'm
who
sure
prescribed it to him?
I'm sure they prescribed it.
So then you guys were all wrong for demonizing him.
I think that it was wrong. Look, you guys want simple answers. You guys want simple answers to this, and it's not simple.
No, this is simple. This one is simple.
It's not simple.
The vaccine question might be more difficult. This is really simple, man.
The maker of the drug. You want me to apologize when the maker of the drug says don't use it for COVID, when all of the research says it is not effective.
Man, he's ridiculous. He's absolutely ridiculous. And I know I'm showing you Joe Rogan highlights where they talk about Joe Rogan. I'm going to just show one where they were talking about the lockdowns, where Chris Cuomo was actually saying to call what happened during any lockdown worldwide was just not totalitarian, and anybody who says that is just out of line to say that type of thing, to brand it as such. That's the clip I'm going to play next, but just this whole thing, man. Not willing to apologize, not willing to walk anything back. The guy faked being in his basement, literally got caught, came out of the basement, was like, no, I was in my basement the whole time. Like, this guy is a sociopath. Why would Patrick... I keep on saying it every clip. Why would he have this guy on his show? Why would he do this? Now, I get it, because now a debate's happening, and I got to be honest, I'm somebody, when I look at debates, I'm like, oh, these are useless. Like, I barely even watch. I don't really watch debates. I don't like the energy. I don't like two people fighting. You know, I don't like people fighting so much and getting so dirty, because some debates get so dirty. And I'm like, oh, well, you should just fight. Like, if you're going to like talk to each other like this, that's just where my mind goes. Like, are you guys going to get violent with each other? Like, or you're just going to get your quarters all up and get all of us all riled up, and that's it. I don't like it. But this debate, I think, needs to happen, because it's a debate, yes, but also it's giving one of these mainstream media people what they deserve. They should all have to go through something like this. They should all have to answer for the things that they said, why they said it. Rachel Maddow, she literally said misinformation. She said things that weren't true. So many different talking heads did. And they just kind of just go on with it. Oh, well, you know. And now they're like, oh, let me tell you about Trump. Oh, let me tell you about this. It's like, you don't know anything, man. You just said a bunch of stuff that wasn't true at all, and you're not even walking it back. It's crazy that there are guys who are in their basement and in their spare rooms like I am. And if something happens where we mess something up, we'll be in the comment section like, oh man, I didn't realize somebody was like, hey man, you said I was doing I was talking about Nancy Pelosi. She was debating in Oxford, and apparently I said Harvard. Somebody called it out. I'm like, oh man, damn, didn't realize. You know what I mean? I didn't sit there and be like, I didn't say that. There's a recording of me saying it. Like, oh, I'm going to bring it down to Shay. It's like I'm debating right now. Anyways, all right, let's get into this last one. Dave Smith.
Okay, first of all, when I describe the lockdowns that swept this nation in 2020 as totalitarian, just to be clear, I'm not being hyperbolic. When you're waking up every morning to watch your TV, to find out from your governor what you're allowed to do today, including, am I allowed to go to work? Am I allowed to have a funeral for my father? Am I allowed to see my family? Am I allowed to step outside without a cover on my face? There is one word and one word only for that, and that is totalitarianism. I'm sorry. That's not slightly hyperbolic. Now, you could argue that this totalitarianism was justified because of the virus, but it is certainly not, and it's not, but you could argue that, but it certainly is totalitarian. If we ever looked on paper, any of us at any point pre-COVID, and said, this government is instituting this policy, we would all recognize that as being totalitarian, as totalitarian as any society has ever existed. If that word doesn't apply to lockdowns, then it doesn't apply to anything. Now, I gotta say, listen, in this world, and I'll say this is true for our world, for the corporate media, for any time you're getting in front of a camera with a lot of people watching and talking about things that matter, the currency that we trade in is the truth. That's the whole currency. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to be right about everything, but it has to mean that I really believe what I'm saying. And if I'm lying to the audience, then I've betrayed my most fundamental duty. Right. And I would also put as a subset of lying, if I'm pretending I know something that I don't know at all, and I'm taking a very strong opinion, and with 5 minutes of research, you could find out that this is completely false, that's another form of lying. Now, sir, you have completely shirked all of your responsibility, and now you're pointing the finger at China. By the way, you were one of the people who demonized Donald Trump for calling it the China virus at the time, okay? So, when it was convenient for you, you had no problem smearing someone for pointing the finger at China. Your entire network also called everyone racist if we speculated that it came from the lab. I mean, literally, I did a podcast, it was either in April or May of 2020, when it already became obvious at that point that the lab was at least a very plausible, like we found out that 3 of the people at the lab went to the hospital with COVID-like symptoms, and there was a lab where they were doing gain-of-function research. And it was like, man, this sure does look like it. I had to stop talking about it for 4 months after that because I would have lost my entire YouTube channel, that was it. It was very clear if you said anything about that for months, you'd be shut down. During that time, you guys at CNN were just mocking everybody who would dare say it was a lab leak, and then we were unable to defend ourselves, or those who did got their livelihoods ruined.
I don't know what was happening on YouTube. I just want to be clear. I was not doing that. When Donald Trump started off, he was calling it the
China virus.
Cold. No, not initially. Initially, he said it was going to go away. It was a cold. I don't fault him for that. He was getting a lot of mixed information, and I know it. I don't blame him for that. He will be blamed for it, not by me. Then it gets bad. That's when he started calling it the China virus. I said to him, in the beginning you said China's been great to us. You can Google it. You can have that great producer you have. Look it up. China's been great. China's been working with us.
Shout out to you, Rob.
China's been great.
Know.
Yeah, Rob, you're amazing. Then it gets bad for Trump. Trump then starts calling it the China virus. I have always pursued the lab leak. I have always talked about it. I have always said it mattered. You can check and find out.
Okay, how
you
about
can
this?
boo, but remember,
listen.
that's about preference,
Yeah, but
not
Chris,
truth.
do you not
He's just he's so wildly lying. there's no other way. It's not oh, he actually believes this. He's just lying. He's just making things up. And again, it's that same mentality that you have when you're on network news, when you're on mainstream media news, that you can just say whatever. And here's the thing. Here's the other thing. When they're talking about CNN and all this stuff, and Joe Rogan's talking about, I'm not sure if they really know. If they actually believe what they're saying, I'm not sure they actually know. It's nothing nefarious. Here's the thing. How can a whole network of people all have the same talking points, all be using the same language, if they're all the ones writing their own scripts and then giving it to someone who works the teleprompter and saying, put that in the teleprompter, that's what I want to come down. That's what I'm saying tonight. That's what I'm saying next week. How could they all have the same language? Are they all in some room together? How are we going to talk about this? Is that what they're doing? Because the image that they're trying to give to everybody is that they're at home and they're all writing their own stuff. And they're all saying, okay, I'll say it like that, and I'll say it like that. Oh, I'm just working on this piece for tomorrow. Oh, I'll say it like that. That's the image that we're all being fed. But then somehow they all have the exact same language. They say the same things. They're all on the same page. That's how you knew, even when Tucker was a part of that whole machine, that's how you knew there was something a little different about him. Because he would have something completely different than what everybody else was saying. Even on Fox. Like, it was just completely different. You know, things started getting different even back when Crossfire days. I mean, he was somebody who stepped back on the war. He said, you know, I was wrong. You know, I went over there. I saw everything terrible. I was wrong. And it was bad. Like, they did not like it. The same thing that you think would happen to somebody today happened to him back then. And it was really, he was done. He got fired because of his stances that he started taking. Same thing happened in Fox. I'm just saying, they know what they're doing. And they understand completely that they're just having someone come up to them and saying, this is what we're talking about today. This is what you're going to be saying today. I don't have a teleprompter. I couldn't afford one. And I'm not good at reading. So I don't do that whole thing. But anyways, guys, that was a debate, man. It's just a lot of that. It's a lot of Chris Cuomo just making things up, lying, getting called out. It's a lot of Dave Smith getting real angry. And even Patrick Bet-David ends up, he's supposed to be the moderator, and he's just supposed to be in between and just, you know, just handling that and making sure things don't get too out of hand, disrespectful at all. And even he starts having a back and forth with Chris and starts calling Chris out on things. It's just, I get it if you want to have somebody on your network who people love to hate. I get it. And that's great for the network. But again, the fact that this guy was willing to do this to Americans, to American citizens, the world, if people elsewhere were watching as well, taking in what he had to say, the fact that he was willing to do that, and the fact that he won't step back from anything that he said, you have no idea what that could have caused, the rift that it could have caused between brothers and sisters and mothers and fathers and sons and daughters and this and that. You have no idea what it could have caused in terms of family. God forbid anything else that could have happened from, you know. And this guy just stands by it. And he did it for money. I think it's the worst thing Patrick Bet-David's ever done. It's not good. Because Chris lacks integrity. When you back Chris, you lack integrity. But that's for a whole other podcast. Anyways, guys, just wanted to show you guys that. Like the podcast, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification button. It helps the channel tremendously. And other than that, I'm out.